It's a cyberpunk-themed first-person shooter which parodies a lot of 1980s action movies and some badass one-liners as a standalone DLC for Far Cry 3. Given that it's based on Junior 2, the same game engine as Far Cry 3, you get exactly the same options. So DirectX 9 and DirectX 11, alpha to coverage, FOV slider up to 8 times anti-aliasing, everything you'd kind of expect to be there. You're not going to be short of options at all. It's just everything to do with the video quality, all of that. It's still quite a demanding game to run, exactly as demanding as Far Cry 3 as you'd expect. But the audio, it's a quiet game, but you can unfortunately only adjust the master volume, and you've won it on max because it's quite a quiet game. But other than that, the soundtrack is absolutely amazing as well. It's definitely some nice themes. In terms of the visual quality, well, you still get that amazing fire that you got since Far Cry 2 that it spreads. It's the best fire physics, and it looks incredible just still, and spreads. And the grass is still nice looking, but it's still just as demanding as Far Cry 3, but because it's at night, and Far Cry 3 never really looked good at night anyway, you feel like it's kind of unnecessary to play it on Ultra, because you don't really see much of the lighting effects. I mean, having the shadows on the highest setting, well, there's no shadows to see, to be honest. I'm not seeing any shadows. So if you're playing this on, say, a 360 or a PS3, you're not going to see much of a graphical difference between this and the PC version. So if you're expecting this to blow you away, you're kind of going to be disappointed. But I suppose it's kind of intentional, given it's meant to be a 1980s satirical kind of thing. There's not really much else they could have done, but if you're after graphics, then you're on the wrong game. But for a game that's like this, they've done a good job with the weapons, making them all light and everything. So yeah, it's kind of a dark game. It's not particularly impressive. It's kind of not much to see graphically, but it's still, you can tell it's on Junior 2. You can tell that, like, if it was in daytime it'd be amazing, but you're not gonna like feel like it's an old game or anything. But it's intentionally meant to look kind of dated because it's kind of meant to be cyberpunk, and the explosions and stuff still look amazing, so you're not going to be disappointed on that front. One of the things that Far Cry 3 really perfected is it was kind of an RPG, but it wasn't so convoluted like a full-on RPG. It was perfectly scaled. Everything was optional. You know, there was all these animals to hunt and side quests to do and everything. You still get them here, but there's just not. It's scaled accordingly. Like in Far Cry 3, you didn't have 10,000 quests that were just there for the sake of it, and and a million different weapons. And same here. There's, you know, they've not given you 100 guns that you're not going to use. They've given you the right number of guns, the right number of upgrades, and you know, to find all the collectibles, there's 4 parts of the map. You can just buy the maps, go and collect them. But similarly, there's not that many of them. So there's still quite a lot of bases to take over. The map's reasonable size. Given that it's a standalone game, it's not the same map as Far Cry 3. But here's what I really like. In Far Cry 3, the leveling system, you had to manually choose to go for a skill tree. It wasn't a complicated one, but you had to choose. On here, there's up to level 30, and each level you get extra upgrades, and the upgrades are chosen for you, and I have to say, they've picked it perfectly. Like, it's not like they're going to give you up to level 100, and by the time you finish the game and done everything, you'll only be like level 10. No, it's perfectly, and I do mean absolutely perfected. Like, by the time you've done everything, you will be level 30, and you will have unlocked everything. And as you can see, I've not really played the game for long, about 6 hours, to do absolutely everything, every collectible, every side quest, every mission. There's only 7 main levels anyway. But you still get to travel in vehicles, and you still get all the stats that you'd get in Far Cry 3 and all that. And you still get them awesome. The upgrades being automated, it's really good. Because if you're playing through a game like this, you don't want to. There's no point in them pretending to make it a full-on RPG for like a 6-hour game. So I'm glad they've done that. You still get all the character bios and everything, and they're actually worth reading because they're funny. They actually have comedy, and you can upgrade your weapons. For example, it's not always just money or side quests. Some are side quests, some are collectibles. Like to get some of them, yeah. There's 3 types of collectibles, and you getting them all will get you different upgrades. And it doesn't take long to get them all. Um, you can buy maps to get them. And there's still animal hunting, but there's only 11 animals, and they're really easy to find. You just need to hunt one of each. There's not like an inventory or anything to manage. It's all automated, so they've not like directly copy pasted from Far Cry 3. They've literally they have properly thought about it. And you get the tutorial. Like Far Cry 3 didn't have a tutorial really, but this does. Like stuff as like simple as like moving forward and back. But unlike instead of being frustrating, it's actually really funny. I would recommend you just playing the game. The tutorial is so cleverly done that it's funny because obviously I mean, who's not played a first-person shooter? A lot of people that will be buying this game will have played Far Cry 3 anyway. In terms of the control settings and everything is pretty much perfect. You can play with a gamepad and whatever you want. You can choose to not have a crosshair, and there's only 3 difficulty options. And unlike the previous Far Cry games, it's not like rock solid, the hardest difficulty. The hard is actually fairly easy, to be honest. What really surprised me about Blood Dragon is how I expected it to be this linear game, nothing like Far Cry. I expected the whole open world element to be pointless, for it to just be a corridor shooter, and to some extent it is, but in the main story it is pretty much. Um, and there is like a bit where it parodies arena shooters. But the core gameplay, the mechanics, are really the best they've ever been, because you don't have to like. It's not like Far Cry 3 you have to unlock skills gradually, because it's a shorter game, so it's been scaled down, as I said before. But the whole it's still a stealth game. It's not just run and gun around, but you can do that. But the AI is so incredibly dumb, just as they were in Far Cry 3, that you really want to just do it stealthily. It rewards it. But you can really play this game how you want. It's up to your discretion. But the whole takedowns and everything that you got in Far Cry 3 doing those chain takedowns. I once had 6 people in the corridor, took them all down. It's really satisfying. It's funny. You can lunge at ridiculous ranges. The AI's super dumb on purpose. It's all good stuff. And you still get to travel on vehicles. There's still bases to take over, side quests to do. Um, all the good stuff. In terms of the weapons, there's not anything pointless. You get a minigun, a shotgun, a pistol, a bow. And there's this laser thing that you fire out of your hand. They've not got anything pointless. That's what I'm trying to get across here. This is what I think is an interesting game, because what they've done is they've taken Far Cry 3, which I thought was a flawless game, and they've condensed it into a 6-hour experience, but scaled. Like, scaled. They've not copy-pasted the weapons. They've not copy-pasted the maps. They've not copy-pasted the quests or the animals or anything. They've really thought, how can we make this interesting? How can we make interesting weapons? Let's give you a sniper rifle where you can upgrade it with explosive rounds. Let's give you a minigun and make the guy shout, "Ah!" Reference to Rambo, and let's make the bow neon. It even says it in the weapon descriptions. Everything about it is just comical. And the level design is exactly the same. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to show you any gameplay of it. But it's really something to see. The level design is awesome, and the best thing about it, Rex's quotes are insane. They are some of the best one-liners you'll ever hear. So if you're into those quotes and references and comedy, you won't. I've not seen a shooter that's kind of funnier than this. But what is good about this game is that it's still a true Far Cry game. It's still got that mix between you can play it stealthily or you can go Rambo in all in, and with all the takedowns and cool skills. It feels like a proper Far Cry game, because the original Far Cry, I felt like it was Rambo in the jungle. This feels a lot more like Rambo as well. The the first game is kind of a bit more serious. This is a lot more jokey, and I think it kind of suits Far Cry a lot actually. Because okay, yeah, there's the dragons, but if you think back to the original Far Cry, which had the mutants, they were on their own kind of team really. So you can still use the mutants against the guards and everything. You still got all those awesome skills. The mix between the combat, just everything really. The gunplay, the stealth. It's still exciting, and you can run super fast, jump super high. It all just makes sense. They really couldn't have done a better job on the gameplay front. If you liked Far Cry 3, well, I don't think you can go wrong with this, because the gameplay is pretty much identical, but with more awesome added. What they've done is, I've always seen Far Cry as being, apart from Far Cry 2, which kind of had a bit of a context, I've always seen it as being quite faceless, to be honest. Never been something that's got a true identity in terms of the context or the story. But this one, it's so strong. The identity is so. I didn't get the 80s references. I wasn't born in the 80s or the 70s or anything like that. But I still found it funny. The stuff that I got, I still thought it was a really well thought out game. Everything about it is just funny. And you don't see comedy in many games, let alone first person shooters. And there's so many shooters out there that are just not worth your time. There's so much average, and this is not average. This is above average. This is beyond that. This is some of the best action, some of the best mechanics, some of the best gameplay, the best game engines. But really short, action packs, no fillers, lots of comedy value, pure kick-ass, like hell yeah kind of gameplay, story, all of that. You'd have to be an incredibly boring person to not enjoy this game. And if you've not played a Far Cry game before, I urge you, this is the one to play. This is the one that, minus the context, is the one that's representative, to be honest. It's what Far Cry is all about, and this one has definitely the best story, the best characters, everything. So it's the one, really. If not the best Far Cry game. Far Cry 3 is obviously better, but if you ain't got the time to play that, this is the one to play.